Hello everyone, my name is Naguura and today I'm going to be talking about professions in Dragonflight. There's lots and lots to talk about for professions, so I'm going to try to go over it pretty quickly to make sure this video is not too long. I'm going to give you steps at the bottom. If there's something you already know, you can skip that part, but just bear with me here. So first of all, professions that are going to be a lot more relevant in Dragonflight because you can craft up to item level 418 with professions now. In comparison, the max item level from Embellishments Vault is 421, and the max item level from the Mythic Raids is 424 to 430. So it's really close to that max item level you can get from the max PvE content. Now I'm quickly gonna explain how work orders work. Work orders basically is a completely new system where you can ask a crafter to create a certain item for you. And the reason why this was implemented is because all of these high item level items that I'm talking about, they all require soul-bound ingredients, and once the item is finished, it's also going to be soul-bound. So it's not going to be on the auction house like BOEs are. If you want one of these soul-bound items, you have to do it through a work order unless you can craft it yourself. Alright, so if you have these work orders, it looks like an auction house really, and if you want to put in an order, you just put it in, say, hey, I want this specific item, and then a crafter can craft it for you if they accept the fee that you're offering. Now, there's public work orders and there's private work orders. The difference between them is that the private ones, you just go to a specific crafter and ask them for it, while the public ones, anyone can craft it for you. And another difference between those two is that if you ask somebody privately with a private work order, then you can set a certain quality that you want for a certain item. While if you use a public work order, the crafter that accepts your offer, they can basically craft whatever quality comes out. It can also be the worst quality, basically. So if you don't care about quality, make a public work order, but if you do care about quality, then you need to make a private work order to make sure you get the item that you really want. The public work orders are also limited. You can only create 30 work orders as a crafter. I think it's per day, so the next day it resets again, so you don't have unlimited amount of work orders you can fulfill as a crafter. The conclusion for all of this is that the professions are not required for any player power gain. So if you do not want to do professions, if you're not interested in professions, then you do not have to do any of this. But it would still be important for you to understand how professions work, because a lot of these profession items, as I said, might be best in slot for you. So you need to understand how work orders work, how quality works, how all of this stuff works, to make sure you get the items that you want and you get it done properly. Another thing to note is that a lot of these high-end items require soul-bound materials, and the person that asks the crafter for the item needs to provide the soul-bound materials. So you cannot just ask a crafter, hey, make this 418 item for me. You need to provide certain materials that you can only get through raiding or through higher end Mythic Plus, and it's going to be pretty limited as well at the start of the expansion, so keep that in mind. But yeah, again, you do not need the professions yourself to have any of these items. There's very small gains for actually having the profession. For example, if you're an engineer, you get wormholes. If you're an alchemist, you get reduction on the toxic effects of certain flasks. If you are alchemist, you have the longer flask. If you're an engineer, you get 2 tinker sockets instead of 1. But none of these are actually directly related to player power, so you don't have to worry about that at all. If you don't want to do professions, you just don't do them and it's totally fine. Alright, now let's talk about specializations. So each profession, no matter if it's a gathering one or a crafting one, has now, this is the whole new interface, and at the bottom you have something called specializations. The way you unlock these specializations is through something called knowledge, and the way you gain the knowledge is by crafting items for the first time. That will give you knowledge, and there will be quests and activities you can do for the Artisan Consortium, which is a faction, a sub-faction for Valdrakken. And there's weekly quests and daily work order quests, stuff like that. They will all give you knowledge. I will talk about it more in detail later on if you're interested in that. And then if you want to understand these kind of specializations, you can just read through the TLDR version here. You can read through each individual spec. And then at the side here, you have this circle. And when you mouse over each step here, you will also see what you gain once you unlock it. One more thing I want to mention about specializations is the fact that you cannot unlock them all at the same time. Once you're level 25 with your Dragonflight profession, you will be able to unlock 1 of the 3 or 4 things you have here at the top. And then if you want to unlock a second one, it requires 50 level towards your profession, and then the next one you can unlock on 75, and then the last one, if you would have a 4th one, it would require 100. So keep that in mind. Don't just randomly select one of these. Make sure you pick and choose which one you want to do first. All right, now let's talk about quality. This is important for everyone, not just for people that care about professions. Basically, every item that is related to professions now has different qualities. You can see it with an icon that is displayed on the top left side of the item that it is. So for example, this one here is quality 3, this item is quality 1, this item is quality 2, and some items go all the way up to quality 5. Now, what does this mean? This means that, for example, if you have potions, and it's only quality 1, then it will give you less mana or less health or less stats compared to having a quality 3 potion. So this is something that is really important. The same goes for materials as well. If you have any sort of profession materials, like for example, if you're mining an ore or you're herbing something, it could come out quality 1, quality 2, quality 3, and so on. And this is something that is pretty important, so keep that in mind. Then let's explain how skill works. This is related to the quality of the item. If you want to craft anything, here you have this new interface where it says recipe difficulty, and then it says your skill. So the recipe difficulty for this item here is 360, and the skill that I currently have towards this craft is 375. So that means that I will be crafting the highest quality item, quality 5, because I have more skill than what is required for the maximum quality, right? If my skill level was only at 350 or at 300, then I would be crafting the lower item level version of this item, the quality 4, quality 3, whatever my skill would be. The skill gets determined by your normal skill level here. So if you have only 50 Dragon Isle inscription, then you will have less skill. Then it's also determined by your specializations, because different points in your specializations will give you more skill. And then it will also be determined by the quality of the items that you're putting in, because each item that you're crafting, of course, requires materials. And if you put in low quality materials, your skill will go further down. If you put in higher ones, your skill will go up. And this is important, of course, to be able to craft the highest quality items. Make sure you always look at the recipe difficulty and look at the skill that you have in comparison. Right now, for this recipe, I would have 220, but it requires 300. So I can craft the item, but it will probably come out quality 2 instead of coming out with quality 3, because that one would require me to have 80 more skill towards it. All right, now let's explain inspiration. Inspiration is another stat that you have, and it basically is an RNG proc to give you more skill. So for example, I have 220 skill, but if I get an inspiration proc when I craft this, then my skill will be increased by 150. So that would mean if it procs the inspiration, then I would get a quality 3 item out of this, right? So the higher inspiration, the higher the chance and the more bonus skill you will be getting. And then you could craft an item on a higher quality, even if your skill is below the recipe difficulty. Then resourcefulness is basically just a chance of getting some materials back that you have been using to craft the item. So instead of using 2 burnished ink, it might randomly proc to only use 1 burnished ink, for example. Then crafting speed is pretty self-explanatory. And then multi-craft is the chance of crafting more copies of the item that you're crafting, right? So you might be crafting 2 sigils instead of 1 if you have a high multi-craft here. All right, now let's talk about profession equipment. At the top here, you have 3 slots, and 2 of them are profession accessories, and 1 of them is a profession tool. Now, these tools are basically just very similar to items that give you stats. And usually these stats involve skill, inspiration, resourcefulness, crafting speed, or multi-craft. So you want to make sure you look at all of the accessories that are available for your profession and just pick whatever you want. Like, do you want more skill? Do you want more inspiration? Whatever it is, and then equip them up here. Usually these accessories are being crafted by other professions, but some of them can also be crafted by your own profession. So take a look at what kind of accessories are available and then make sure you use them. Keep in mind that accessories are also unique, have unique slots. So for example, there can be engineering gloves. There can be 2 different types of engineering gloves, but you cannot equip both of the gloves, right? You can only equip one pair of gloves and then one pair of goggles or whatever it might be. So make sure you take a look at that before you get two of the same type. All right, now let's talk about the recrafting system. You can recraft certain items. For example, if you craft an item with quality 1, you can recraft it, and it might come out with quality 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever it may be. Recrafting costs certain materials, and one of the materials is a soul-bound material that is called Artisan Metal. And Artisan Metal is mainly used for recrafting, and it's a pretty, I would say, rare material that you don't get too much of. You get it through first crafts. You can also get it through certain artisan consortium quests, the same reputation or the same faction that also gives you the knowledge as well. I will talk about that a little bit later as well. Then embellishments are another thing that is related to crafts. You can see I have one here on my offhand, for example. It says unique equipped embellished 2. So these embellishments are basically enchants, but you can only have 2 of those enchants on your gear at any moment. There's multiple different ones depending on a profession. There's some items that come with an embellishment, so you can only craft this item with the enchant on it and not without. But there's other items that you can craft without an embellishment or with embellishment as well. And these embellishments have various different effects. It's just, it has some proc chance to do something. It sometimes, gives you a stat, or sometimes you even have stat bonuses as well. I think tailoring, leatherworking, and mail, and I think all of them actually have a set. Usually there are 2 sets, so you have to equip both of the items to get the stat bonus. And then usually it also counts as 2 embellishments. So these sets are a bit stronger, they give you a bit more stats, but then in return, it counts as 2 embellishments instead of just 1. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the embellishments because there's so many different ones, but just keep that in mind that exists. Depending on what spec you play, you want to figure out what the best embellishments are for you. All right, now let's talk about how crafting these high item level items works. So you need BOP items to craft these highest item level items. One of the BOP items you need is called Primal Chaos. Primal Chaos is a soulbound item that drops in almost every content. It drops in outdoor content by doing certain quests, world quests, strong boxes. Then it also drops in dungeons, in heroic dungeons even. It drops in Mythic Plus dungeons, in the raid, basically anywhere. This material is used for lots and lots of higher quality profession items. It's also used for the best potions as well. So if you want the best potions, offensive potions, then the Primal Chaos is required for each individual potion, unfortunately. Then there's Spark of Ingenuity. Ingenuity comes out of the Engine of Innovation, which you unlock at the end of the campaign. And this one gives you a spark at the very start, at the start of Dragonflight, and then 1 every 2 weeks. So this is a very heavily time-gated material until you have 5 of them. So for 10 weeks, it will be heavily time-gated, and these sparks are required for almost all of these high item level items that I've been talking about. So keep that in mind. This is incredibly important information because this means you cannot just craft, I mean you can, but it would be very unfortunate if you go out and use these sparks to craft random items and then you cannot get them back anymore. So that means that the amount of crafted items you can use early on is really, really limited if you want the higher item level ones. So you have to pick and choose, oh, do I want a weapon, or do I want a ring, or do I want a necklace? Because all of these require these sparks. And as I said at the very start, you will only have 2. One at the start of Dragonflight, and then 2 weeks later when the raid comes out, you will get a second one. And then it will take another 2 weeks for you to get the third one. So you'll only have 2 sparks available when the raid comes out for the first 2 weeks at least. All right, now I'm going to explain Primal Infusions. Primal Infusions and Concentrated Primal Infusions are required to upgrade the items to the higher item levels. It starts with item level 382. That's the lowest epic item level that you're crafting. And to be able to craft it to higher item level, you need something called a Primal Infusion or a Concentrated Primal Infusion, as you can see here. And then it can be crafted to item level 395 to 405, depending on the quality. Or it can be crafted to 408 or 418, depending on the quality. And the way you get these infusions is by combining 2 different materials. Number 1, Primal Chaos, the same material we talked about earlier. And number 2 is these Primal Focuses. One is called Primal Focus, and one is called Concentrated Primal Focus. The Primal Focus you need 10 of, plus 100 Primal Chaos to create 1 Primal Infusion. And for the Concentrated Primal Infusion, you need 10 Concentrated Primal Focus and combine it with 150 Primal Chaos. And these drop in M+ and in the raid. Primal Focus is the lower quality version. That one drops in heroic raids and in Mythic Plus dungeons from 10 to 15. And the Concentrated Primal Focus drops in the Mythic raid and in +16 dungeons and upwards. And then, as I mentioned before, there's also something called Artisan Metal, and that Artisan Metal is also a soulbound ingredient that you mainly need for recrafting items. So if you have a lower quality and you want it to be higher, then you need that Artisan Metal material to recraft it. And this is a material that only the crafters themselves are really getting. So if you're not doing any sort of professions yourself, you won't be able to really have this Artisan Metal that much. So that is something you have to keep in mind. So if you're not doing professions at all yourself, then maybe you shouldn't craft these items in lower quality and then constantly upgrade them, because then you would constantly have to pay the crafter for the Artisan Metal, when in return you could just craft the whole item in the finished version, in the maximum quality version on the get-go, and then you don't need any Artisan Metal at all. Alright, now let's talk about the recipes. So the recipes for the professions, you will see where you get them from by just clicking on the certain item that you want, and then you click here, it says Dragon Owl Inscription 45, costs 170 gold. Now some of these recipes are locked behind renown, quite a few of them actually. So if you are a person that wants to do professions, then I definitely recommend to really look into all of the renowns, all of the different reputations, and see what kind of professions you want. For example, this one here at level 15 has an inscription recipe. So make sure you take a look at all of the rewards, all of the recipes you can get, and then figure out which kind of renowns you want to go after to unlock certain recipes that you maybe need for your profession. All right, and that's it about professions. One more thing that I didn't necessarily mention too much in this guide is that there are certain weekly quests and daily quests that are going to be happening for people that do professions, and you want to make sure you're not missing out on those. I will be linking a guide in the description below that contains all of this kind of information and all of these weekly quests and stuff like that. So check out that link if you want to know more about it. And yeah, I hope this really helped to give you a little bit of an overview of this new profession system, also for people that are really not interested in professions but still want to have a little bit of an idea on how it works. Alright, that's it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like these. I'm going to be posting a lot of them throughout Dragonflight, so make sure you do that. And if you have any questions, ask in the comments below, or check out my stream over at twitch.tv/Naguura, and you can always ask anything there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!